Welcome to this week's episode of What's at Stake. We're your hosts, Ilan Mui, Managing Director at Penta.
And I'm Megan Whittemore, Managing Director at Penta. Today, we are joined by my good friend and former colleague, also a former GW alum, Moesh Wunanoo, to talk about all things evolving in the media landscape. Moesh and I know each other from our days working at Fox News Channel, where I took on the role of research producer for Fox News Sunday, and Moesh went out on the road as political producer covering the McCain campaign in 2008. He then went on to become one of the youngest media executives at Bloomberg TV and CBS News. In 2020, he launched MoNews, an award-winning social-first news brand that provides news updates and daily analysis to audiences via Instagram, as well as the daily newsletter and podcasts that he hosts. Moesh, welcome to the podcast.
It is so great to be with you guys, Megan, as we now get to interact. And yet we've interacted. We were colleagues at Fox. Then you were on Capitol Hill. I was covering Capitol Hill. And so we've had many iterations over time. So it's great to be with you again. And Ilan, great to see you as well.
So for people who are listening, let's start with MoNews. What really is MoNews? Tell us a little bit about what it is, why you launched it. How did you come about this? I think people are really interested in kind of the personal story, how you got to this point in your career, and what should they know about MoNews and what you're doing today?
Well, as you mentioned, I spent a number of years. I always wanted to be a journalist. I spent a number of years at Fox News, went to Bloomberg, spent almost a decade at CBS News. The most fun I had at CBS News, I was given an opportunity to launch our streaming channels and digital presence there. And this is like more than 10 years ago now, about 2014. And I was trying to stress the merits to the folks back there, like, this Roku and Apple TV, this is going to be a thing. Like, this is where we're going. And got some people who were on board, and definitely some people who are like, your cute little internet thing, good luck with it. Well, we know how that all has turned out, but I had a chance after that to go back and run the evening news. The 6:30 broadcast has been around since the Truman administration that Cronkite used to host, and found myself in 2018 and 19 telling people, tune in tonight at 6:30 p.m. in an era where, like, we know that that's not how news works anymore. And so I ended up doing that for a couple of years and then leaving CBS and really needed a break from the day-to-day grind. And so was looking at potentially going documentaries, and I was consulting, and would come into spring of 2020. So after a few months, and we know what unfolded there. And my friends and family had always come to rely on me as like, I'm the news guy in the family. What's going on? Is the world ending? Is martial law going to be declared in New York? I mean, we all knew what that period of time was like in March of 2020. And it was the first time I wasn't in a newsroom. And so I found the experience of being a news consumer sucked. And so in lieu of trying to text back everyone that I knew about what was going on, I was like, you know what, just follow me on Instagram. And I really viewed it as like an exercise I was going to do for who knew how long to help my friends and family. Like, I'll watch Fauci so you don't have to. I'll watch Trump so you don't have to. I'll watch Cuomo. I'll break it down. Here are the sources that I trust. Here are the reporters that I trust on these issues. And so I was doing that in March and in April. It was a closed Instagram account, private Instagram account. My wife, or then girlfriend at the time, was like, people could really like be helped by this. Like, make it public. I was like, sure. And then we get to 1,000, then 2,000, then 5,000. Then celebrities start following me. And by the summer of 2020, I'm now a few months into what, again, wasn't the launch of a business. It was a service to my friends and family. And now several thousand people I didn't know at the time. And then by the summer of 2020, now the Jonas brothers start following me, like literally like Joe and Nick Jonas.
I mean, that's how you know you've made it, Moesh. I mean, when Joe Bro is following Mo, you've made it.
We got 2 out of 3 of them. Kevin still hasn't followed me after all these years, but Joe and Nick started following me. And they're like DMing me. They're messaging me. They're showing up on my Instagram lives. And so I got a message. I mean, to your point, Ilan, a friend of mine texted me. He's like, you're stuck. Right? You're going to keep doing this. And I was doing like 24/7 updates. I mean, you remember that era of like, it was initially COVID, then we get into Black Lives Matter, and then we're into an election. And, by that summer, I think the realization was this is not a temporary exercise. And I'm going to go back to traditional media. This is the thing. Now, how do I build this up? How do I turn what is a service to my friends and family into a business? And so ultimately, it started as like, I'm going to give you real-time updates and analysis into things and aggregate things. And over time has become both an aggregation service, analysis. We try to do historical context, one really moment I remember when we got a huge amount of following was during the withdrawal from Afghanistan in the summer of 2021. And, people were like, can I ask you something? Like, who's the Taliban again? Right? Like really, basic questions that they feel they weren't getting the answers from traditional media, because we know the limits of traditional media. You might, at the evening news, when I ran the evening news, after you take out commercials, it's 21 minutes. I could do 8 stories. Some of those stories are like 60 seconds. Like, hey, correspondent in the middle of Gaza, I need, you have 60 seconds to explain the issue tonight. Literally. I have an extra 20 seconds. I'll give you 80 seconds tonight.
It feels like a lifetime, 80 seconds. I mean, people would, crawl over each other for that. I mean, I think what's so interesting is that you found an organic audience, which originally was friends and family, but then obviously expanded to celebrities like the Jonas Brothers. What do you think about what you were doing really resonated with people? And I think you were sort of getting there around maybe not talking down to people, maybe spending more time, maybe being able to explain things at both a basic level and a higher level analysis level. What do you think made this work?
So I think a number of levels. One, that people are watching me on their devices in their pocket, right? Like I think there's that like intimacy factor there. Two, I was very transparent about what I knew and didn't know. I didn't try, as some of us are prone to in the media, to say, well, let me tell you exactly what happened today. I was like, you know what? We actually don't know the answer to that. This is what we do know. This is what this person's saying. They've been reliable on this front, but haven't been reliable on that front. So I think just super transparent about things. I think what's also super important on social media is you let people in on your personal life. That's something also that like standing in a suit with a microphone out in front of the White House or whatever, like, who is this person? Why should I trust them? There's also something to like the fact that people have come to rely on creators and influencers for advice on home renovations, on lifestyle, on makeup, on a whole variety of things. And it was sort of inevitable. And we probably, until we saw it, we didn't get it. But it really happens during COVID when we start to rely on individuals to give you news. Like, this is my lifestyle person. And I became the person's news person. And like, I think a super important thing, and I'll add this, is it was a two-way street on social media. Whereas news feels like they tune in every night. We know you're watching. We see the ratings numbers, but I have no conversation. I have no dialogue with the audience. And yet on social media, if I posted something and somebody reacted to it, I would then post their question and answer their questions. And I think that interaction was very appealing to folks.
Yeah, Moesh, I was going to ask you to add to that, because I know early on you were really focused on user engagement, like you said. How did you feel kind of breaking down that wall, not being on the traditional news media side anymore, and now you're the personality, you're the influencer, you're the content creator? Talk to us a little bit about how did that work for you personally? How did you approach it? How did you engage with viewers and users following your content?
Well, I mean, I had a good case of imposter syndrome. Like, I was a behind the scenes guy. I was always the guy behind the person, right? Like, that's what you do as a producer. You make, you and I, got our careers started, Megan, like making Chris Wallace look good and look really smart and having all the questions and all the research. And so I did that my entire career. I was the person behind the person. I got to produce interviews where I'd go with the correspondent. I'm like, all right, we're interviewing the president today, Charlie Rose. Like, this is what you're going to ask him. This is how he's going to answer it. This is how you follow up. We can make a headline on this. And so I always did that. So to me, it was like super weird. Like, wait, they want to know what I have to say. I'm not the person. I'm the person behind the person. Now, I will, again, give credit there to my wife, Alex, who was like, no. Like, you're the person. Like, people like you. And we actually would, like, initially on Instagram, I was doing mainly text and I wouldn't put my face on camera. And like, she's like, if you're going to grow, like, people need to know who you are. And we would like have it out, like, and she's like, I was right? And I was like, yes, you were right. And like the first time I taped something, I think I was trying to do like an explainer on the Supreme Court. And it probably took like a good hour to do like a 2-minute thing. Now I like, knock it out first try, so the Malcolm Gladwell rule of like 10,000 attempts, 10,000 hours or whatever, makes you an expert. But it was weird. And then it sort of embraced it. And now it's incredible the impact you can have on people. Once in a while I get spotted like in New York and in other cities too. Like, hey, are you Moesh from? I'm like, yes, yes, I am. Can I take a selfie? I'm like, oh my God. So
now you're the celebrity.
Well, I'll do celebrity with an asterisk.
You're following yourself.
Internet celebrity. Internet celebrity.
Well, I want to zoom out a little bit because Megan, you use the term, sort of news influencer or content creator that I want to dig a little bit deeper into, especially as it relates to journalism. One of my former colleagues, Liz Kelly Nelson, who now writes a newsletter called Project C, she did this great project in which she tried to sort of break down or categorize the landscape of journalism today. And on one side of the spectrum, she had traditional news organizations, which we can all name very easily, your New York Times, your Wall Street Journal, your Washington Post, your trad news, I guess, as the kids might call it today. But then as you go across the spectrum, there are a different number of models. So what we used to think of as new media is now feels a little bit more dated, that it's your newsletters like a semaphore or a puck or a punch bowl. But then you seem to exist in a space that's even beyond that on the spectrum, where there are journalists like yourself who have turned into content creators. And then there are people who are journalism adjacent who might be what we call news influencers, or what they sort of describe in this overview of the landscape, these news influencers who are maybe more personality driven, maybe not traditionally trained journalists, but still, because of the influence they have on social media, they can end up making news, even though they themselves did not start out as journalists. And so I'm a little curious about how you think of yourself along this spectrum, and if you have been able to define it, and sort of how you see the boundaries of journalism starting to change.
Yeah, I've been trying to bring some of the approaches, the fact checking, the analysis from traditional journalism to the new media space. So I sort of see myself sort of marrying the two, because there's a lot of like digital creators. I think the preference is creators over influencers, but it really depends on who you ask, who've come up in this environment with no traditional journalism background, but like they are interested in the news. And they're like, I'm an independent reporter. I'm an independent journalist. And so I think there's a wide spectrum of folks. And some of those people have a very clear agenda. Some of those people are hiding their agenda. Some of those people might be paid by certain people. I mean, it's a wide spectrum of people on YouTube, on Substack, on a variety of these platforms now, where anybody can be their own news creator, and no matter your background, no matter your knowledge or lack of knowledge, what I found remarkable in getting into this space is that I also became a go-to for people who started to feel, and this especially was true during beginning with Black Lives Matter, and now I think it's true for pretty much every issue. They would like message me like, "Hey Moesh, like my community is telling me like asking me questions about like what I think about Israel, Gaza, or BLM or whatever. What should I tell them?" Like, well, and it's like they work in fashion or they work in whatever, but they we sort of have entered an era now where you feel obligated at times to like have a viewpoint, and your audience demands it. And so, they might ask questions. I was like, well, and she's like, why do you know that? I'm like, well, this is what this person has said. This is what this person said. This is what we know about that. Here's the history and context behind that. So I've tried to play my role to sort of like steal from the Marines, being like the few, the proud, the journalists, like with journalism background in the new media space. But again, try to bring fact checking, verification of headlines, trying to give people fair perspective on things to a space where you don't always see that. And there's like this knee jerk to retweet or repost without any sense of like, well, do we think that's real? Do we think that like maybe that 7-second video clip might be out of context? And so what I try to do, and this is a bit of what we also try to do at MoNews, is bring media literacy both to students, but also to adults, to our parents and grandparents. Like, what are questions you should be asking about this account? Like, do you know this person's background? Do you think they might have an agenda? Until yesterday, were they posting anything about the news? And so that's a bit of what I'm trying to do in the space here.
Do you think your audience understands that? I mean, do you think that they can distinguish between the few, the proud, the journalists, and I started my account yesterday and here's a bunch of viral clips?
I think some can. I think our audience at MoNews comes to us because they know our background. They've come to rely on us, and they're willing to have their political bubble punctured once in a while. And I've seen it over time. Where like, I thought you were this, and you're clearly a raging liberal, or you're an apologist for Elon Musk. I'm like, all right, pick whoever I am today. But it's, it's interesting because we live in such partisan time. So I think for the most part, they've come to rely, on our account. They might send me clips from other accounts being like, hey, is this real? And sometimes, by the way, they'll send me like a clip and they're like, it's a clip from like CBS News or like the New York Times. Like, but the lack of transparency, going back to the transparency front that the media has, like people don't know that there's like standards departments, that like there's little fact checkers in certain places. And that you also can't paint every organization with one brush, that sometimes there's good reporters and there's not so good reporters and good editors and bad editors and whatnot. And they make mistakes like everyone else makes mistakes. Not everything is malicious intent. So, I think part of what we're doing beyond covering the news is also giving folks an education in the media and how the media covers things.
Yeah. And to add to the transparency piece that you mentioned, Moesh, how do you also you come across super authentic because you are who you say you are, right? You are literally trained as a journalist and you know what the news is and you've been in newsrooms, you know how editorial decisions get made and how news gets made. But do you think people are looking for that authenticity, and how should people look at content creators too? Because not all content is created equal, right? So how do people really ascertain what you're telling them to be factual and true and look at something else and really be able to distinguish between those two?
So I think, when you look back at kind of internet culture, millennial culture, there was this kind of airbrushed my perfect life on social media. We had filters on Instagram when it launches more than 10 years ago. And then there's this evolution, I would say, over the last decade where it's like, tell me, let's be real here. Like authenticity is the name of the game. And
that's literally that's the name of the app. Be real, right?
Yeah, exactly. Be real, right? Like be real. It captures you in a moment. Gen Z, this is like very true for them. Like they want it raw. They don't trust anything. Nothing is airbrushed. It's like a rejection of kind of, again, where the millennials were at, crew, like where all of us were at like 20 years ago. We're like, we are going to give you this perfect internet. And so I think anything that is not authentic is rejected. And you see this also, like, it's very interesting, like seeing like corporate apology videos and crisis comms. Like if it feels overly scripted, whatever, like it does not play. In fact, it makes your case more challenging. So I think that, that's one of the huge dividing lines between who's going to be successful and who's not going to be successful out there. But I also tell people, getting to the second part of your question, Megan, don't just rely on me. People are like, oh, you're my news person. I was like, no. The way you do news these days, unfortunately, is it takes more work than going to one source. And so I want you to go to multiple places. I want you to get multiple perspectives on things. My team is only humanly capable of covering this many stories a day. We might miss things. And it's not for trying to purposely ignore it so you don't know that story. It's like literally, I can't even cover everything given this current administration that Trump does in a day. Like there's just so much happening every day. So it's like of the 14 things coming to the White House, like let's cover 6 of those things today or 4 of those things or whatever. So I think getting multiple perspectives is important. I think even getting, we talk about biased news. Yeah, partisan news is good. Like you should get it. You should find out why Republicans think the way they do on this and why Democrats think the way they do on this. I think, watching some of these immigration headlines has been fascinating, the lens through which people see things. And I think, so you're not surprised by what happens as a country. If you're getting multiple perspectives, you'll be in a much better place. And you're like, oh, I sort of expected that given what I've been seeing covered on MSNBC or seeing the way that Fox News is covering X, Y, and Z.
Moesh, I'd like to go back to something you said at the beginning, which is, when you hit sort of a critical mass of followers, you realize, oh, there might be a business here. And I think I want to double click on that because I think that that's been obviously a big challenge within the news industry, not just, or maybe this is a little bit circular, but not just, how they deliver the news and the formatting and sort of the way that they engage with users, but also how do you make money in an increasingly disparate advertising environment. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about your business and how you've been able to to build this to be financially stable, hopefully for yourself, and then how you think about potentially scaling it in the future.
So that was one of the big questions I had was like, I love doing this. Can I make a business off of this? Can I make a business that'll pay my rent, feed my daughter? Like, like literally, like, is this enough? Or is this like a sort of side thing? And I was consulting at the time. Alana, told you before we got recording here, consulting for a number of networks. I went back to Fox to launch the Fox Weather app. I was at CNBC to help launch a show over there. And I was like, all right, I can make money in consulting and I'll do this news thing as sort of a nice to have. And so my initial experiment with monetization was on Patreon. Which is a site that was actually created by, I think, guys who were in a band once, and they needed financial support because, again, speaking of industries that is, had been trying to figure it out, is the music industry. And so they found that, like, go to the community and be like, hey, we need to put a new album out, or we're going to go on a concert tour. Like, we need money. It's sort of a, Kickstarter, but like for organizations and bands. And so I created a Patreon account, and I was like, hey, if you like what I'm doing here on Instagram, like, any of you want to support me and want to make this a real thing, a full-time job, for me, like, send me some support. And suddenly hundreds of people started like donating and becoming monthly members. And I was like, oh, there's like a thing here. Like, people are willing to pay for something that they like to keep it around. Because I was like, this takes a lot of time to do. I need your support. So that was sort of the first use case. Is like, all right, there's a subscriber opportunity here. And so over time, I think one of the challenges also doing news on Instagram is monetization is difficult because what is my content? Politics. At the time it was like Roe v. Wade, abortion, war. Like, some advertisers don't want to be near that content. While they're okay with it in sort of the traditional setting on, you see commercials on CNN or whatever, new media felt different to them. Now that's evolved over time and it's become much easier. And we have some larger sponsors now, including Amazon Audible and Procter and Gamble and some, like real, publicly traded companies that are comfortable with this environment. And it was hard initially. So initially, my big push was among subscribers. And so over time now, we have monetized. We're basically a 2/3, 1/3 split, 2/3 subscriber revenue. And these are people who pay us monthly, annually. I have lifetime members as well for added content. Some of them are just there because they want to support independent journalism, sort of like the PBS, NPR, like, I just like what you're doing and here's a donation. And some people are like, well, what are you giving me in exchange for that? And so for that, we'll do weekend news coverage. We have an extra podcast. We'll do behind the scenes content. And a lot of that is like, I've moved over a lot of my video interaction with people over to the paid subscribers. And meanwhile, we build up partnership revenue. We're looking at events as another sort of slice of revenue. Just for fun, we created like merch, hats, and T-shirts, which is like sort of a side thing. It's not really paying the bills, but it's fine. And so, you really have to think, and this is also weird as a journalist, like, I had to put my business hat on for the first time and think of myself as a business person and like, how do I work on marketing and business and audience retention and all of this. And I think that's been a big challenge for a lot of folks heading into the creator space. You have a lot of people leaving traditional media and starting Substacks. And some have done incredibly well. I mean, you've probably heard of the success of like the Free Press and Barry Weiss, which she's done over there. She's the #1 Substack. She's a former New York Times reporter. And Jim Acosta from CNN recently went over there and it's doing well. And so you see Don Lemon, Megyn Kelly, you see it a lot in the partisan space too, who've created incredible YouTube and podcast channels. And that's not just traditional journalists, right? I was in a room recently where I was next to Sean Spicer, who's like building his own digital media empire, and he's a guy coming from the RNC, former White House press secretary. And so that's been fascinating to see that space blow up. But it is a very robust and evolving environment, and it just requires you to constantly be able to pivot because it's fast moving.
So I want to build on that a little bit. Obviously, at Penta, we help a lot of our clients, right, navigate this new media space. So, Moesh, how should we be thinking about engaging with the new media, especially as you mentioned some of the corporate partners that you already have, but really, how should companies, policymakers, people who have either news or a story to tell or a brand they want to position, what should they be doing to engage successfully with people like you or some of the other, again, opportunities to kind of engage in this new media landscape? What's your advice to them?
I mean, so one thing to keep in mind is that, like, if you're going to reach an audience, you do need to embrace a new media strategy. That getting an article in the New York Times or getting a segment of the Today Show is only going to reach a segment of the audience these days. That was 20 years ago. You're like, oh my God, we're an A1, the New York Times, and we're on with like Matt and Katie on Today. Like, we're good. That was amazing. Today, it's actually been amazing. We actually had a feature on MoNews in the New York Times, and I have to tell you that maybe I shouldn't have been shocked. The lack of reaction and audience for a New York Times story about us versus having done some niche podcasts and YouTubers, we've gotten much more reaction. Just to show you where the audience is, I'll hear from traditional media anchors at various cable networks that we've worked at, Megan, and that we're familiar with, Elan, and they'll send me a segment they did on their network, and they're like, hey, can you post this on your Instagram page? I'm like, you have a TV network you work at. They're like, yeah, but like all my friends follow your Instagram page. And so just to give you a sense of the sign of the times. And so that's my message to brands too, which is, look at the median demo of like a TV watcher. 65 to 70. The median viewer of cable news these days is 70. Half the audience is over the age of 70. Like 80% of our audience is female on Instagram. Like, I have what was the Today Show 25 to 54-year-old female. Like, they're getting their news on Instagram these days and on TikTok and these new platforms. So number one, embrace reality. Number two, you got to have a stomach for risk, because you have more upside potentially, because, like, let's be frank here, taking off my big J journalism hat, you can probably make more demands of a creator and influencer in terms of an interview, things that are off limits. Those of us at TV networks are like, you can't tell me what to ask. I'm going to ask whatever I'm going to ask, and you're going to have an answer for it. Creators don't follow that model, and so you might be able to get away with more or be able to kind of mold the segment more. At the same time, there's inherent risk, because that creator, who knows, are they going to end up actually using the segment? Like, that's one question. What is in their background? Like, you need to vet their accounts. And so that requires more homework on your end. Like, let's go back a couple years, because inevitably, whatever, name the media outlet, they'll be like, do you know that creator that you went on with back in 2019, do you know what they said about X minority group, or what they had, what they tweeted? So you got to have a stomach for this stuff and be prepared to say, well, okay, like, what is your scenario? What is your statement if they said something controversial or did something controversial X years ago? So I think you got to embrace the reality. You got to embrace new media. We're seeing it. I mean, we've been invited to the White House several times recently in Capitol Hill. So politicians have realized this. I think a number of businesses have realized this, but you do need to realize that, again, it requires more homework, more research, but can end up reaching younger, and by when I mean younger, under the 60 audiences, and you can really take interesting slices. You can do an analysis, and I imagine you guys work on this where you're at. Like, if I want to hit people in Wisconsin who are this age group, you can find a social media page or a podcast that appeals to those people, and so it allows you to be much more targeted.
Moesh, maybe final question for you, if I could ask you to get your crystal ball out and look ahead to the next, maybe just even 3 to 5 years. Where do you see journalism and the new media landscape going? Is what you're doing now going to still be considered new media? Will it be, yesterday's media by then, and there's something else that will evolve or come out of this? What's your take?
Things are moving quickly. I think, we're still really only since the release of ChatGPT that really went public just over 2 years ago. Like, the AI thing, I think, is the big question mark right now in terms of its role in society, but also its role in journalism. Will it kill journalism, or will it save journalism? Right? Like, can you, as a local paper that only has 2 reporters left, like, use AI to churn out more stories by feeding press conferences in and notes in? Like, and so I think AI is one key question mark. And I think anything related to AI will be and customization for folks is going to be the cutting edge. One thing I have in mind is that, like, 10 years ago, I was at digital at CBS, and like Facebook was the end all be all. Right? The 2016 election is the Facebook election. Today, the only person I know on Facebook is like my father, who's in his mid 70s, who it's like, oh, I saw this on Facebook. And so inevitably we know that this is how these platforms evolve. It's one of the reasons why, like, I'm not putting all my eggs in the Instagram basket, because, we know it's going to be a reality, but like the question is when like Instagram's not cool anymore, right? Instagram's for our parents and grandparents, and like there's a new thing, and that's TikTok, and then there's going to be something beyond TikTok, right? Because then Alpha Gen's going to come up and be like, you Gen Zers, you guys are so old with your TikTok. We got whatever it is. And so I think 3 to 5 years is a lifetime in the digital era. And so I think that one of the things we're focused on, I think a lot of creators are, is like owning your own content, having your own platforms. If Instagram went away tomorrow, I can't get in touch with like 90% of my audience. Now, luckily, I've launched a newsletter and a podcast, but that's always the fear of building your thing and building your content on somebody else's platform. So I'm hopeful that I will remain in the cutting edge. Will I be doing exactly what I'm doing today? Absolutely not. I mean, will I still have a daily podcast? Will I have 5 podcasts? I don't know. But I do know that part of my fear is that like I haven't built myself up enough on TikTok. And so like this year is the year I'm like trying to increase our bandwidth and really build out YouTube and TikTok, because I'm basically trying to ensure I have a beachhead on every major platform, depending on what becomes the go-to.
Well, Moesh, we are excited to follow your journey across TikTok, YouTube, and all 5 podcasts that you launch in the next few years. So thank you so much for joining us. It was really a wonderful and engaging conversation. To our listeners, thank you for joining us as well. Remember that you can like and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. And you can follow us on X at PentaGRP and on LinkedIn at Penta Group. Mo, tell us how we can follow you.
Just my first name, Mosheh on Instagram. If you just search MoNews, MO space news, you'll find it there. Frankly, if you just head to monews.com, you can sign up for our free newsletter. You can access the podcast, search MoNews on whatever podcast platform you get. You can follow us on YouTube. Again, just if you search MoNews, MO space news. I believe we have now gotten above all Missouri news-based outlets for MO News. So we should come up first for you on Google.
All right. Higher than a postal code. I'm your host, Elon, and as always, thanks for listening to What's at Stake.